I'm Jonathan Mamrell, and you're on another HR Engage podcast episode. Today we have Claudia Faulkner with us. Hey, Claudia, how you going?
Good. How are you?
Great. I am great. Now, I'm really excited to have you on this HR Engage podcast episode. You have a storied history in human resources. And, I could do the whole thing of read out your profile and the bio like others do, but you're here in front of us. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Okay. Well, I haven't always lived in Australia. I am Canadian born, but I grew up in the UK. So Some of the words I may say today may sound a bit odd, and that will probably be why. I moved here in 1992, so I have been here for a long time. It is the longest place that I have lived, and I could not imagine living anywhere else. I love it here. I did go back to Canada for about 6 months with work a few years ago, and I can't tell you how much I missed being away. So there you go. Needed to go away to find that out. My family is far away. I'm here by myself. So my family is far away, but they mean everything to me.
That's
so
in Canada and UK?
In Canada and the UK.
Yep.
Yeah. So right across, and the United States as well, actually, a little bit.
Oh, okay.
And then I guess the other side of me is that I'm a true animal lover. And that is both domestic and wild. I have been known to bring home injured animals and have my partner sort of go, oh God, here we go again. But we've fostered, we have our own fur family, and we certainly have fostered kittens and the like over the years and love it. So I guess that's a little bit about me, and why I'm here today.
Well, why you are here today is because, you are probably one of the more impressive HR people that I know. And I know quite a few.
Thank you.
And I think a lot of our listeners would love to hear a little bit about your journey. So give us a bit of a rundown of your journey into human resources, please.
Sure. So probably long before it started, I was very fortunate. My first role in Australia was with the peak employer body, Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and really working with, I would say, probably the best IR people in the industry at the time. Working alongside them, working with them, working for them was amazing. And there were test cases, there were a whole bunch of different things that happened and really did shape what we know as the Fair Work Act today.
Yep.
I think at the time in my early 20s, I didn't realize just how influential all of that was, but it actually was. And I talk about it often because it is what shaped me. There was a significant thing that happened in 1996 or 97.
Yes.
That was huge at the time and really did change a lot of things, and is what stirred me and spurred me to go back to university and get a HR degree, focusing on IR and HR, because I just thought, wow. And
so you were forged in the fire of IR. Is that what you're saying? Your world into HR was forged in the fire of IR.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So I did go back to uni. I still worked full time, studied part time, and then in 2005. So I stayed with the chamber until then. So I was there from 93 to 2005, and grew, in what I was doing and how I was doing that over that time.
Did you say 93 to 2005? So that's quite a big period of time.
Yeah. So a good chunk of time. I mean, it was a small group of people, but the work we did was amazing and still, reflects and affects people today. So amazing. Late 2005, I decided it was time for, I guess, a full HR role. And that was when I moved into engineering, which I've remained in engineering. So it's now nearly 19 years of engineering, but I love it. And I would say that because of who I've been working with and how each of those roles have come about, because each of them have been newly created roles within 3 different businesses, I am a generalist. I'm a generalist because I enjoy being across lots of things, I think, number 1. And 2, when you are creating something from the beginning, you generally are going to go down that path. So I guess I've grown teams, both in size and in what those people can do. So just watching people grow has been amazing. I guess that's been a big part of it. Currently, my role is growing, a business to where it is at the moment. We'll continue to grow that, shaping the team as well. And that's across 5 states. So it's not just about the numbers, it's about the people and how they can sort of grow within our business. So that's very important to me. And I've always remained nimble, and I will remain nimble because there are so many things you can get involved in. There are a number of rabbit holes you can go down,
Yep.
and it can be very hard to come back out. So I do try to stay nimble, but stay real with that. So I'm not too far removed. More recently, I was known as the Swiss Army knife in HR. I think because something would come up and I'd say, I've got a thing for that. And so we would be able to work through how we managed through a particular situation.
Yeah. And just picking up on that, you've talked about how you're a generalist and, get that sort of Swiss Army knife appeal from a HR perspective. But what's really interesting is that you've really stayed in engineering, HR in engineering, in the engineering
Yep.
field, which is, I think, quite interesting to hear. Can you tell us about why you've decided to do that and why I suppose you've sort of stayed in this industry
Yep.
for so long, especially in engineering?
Initially, I didn't think I would stay in engineering. I felt we spoke 2 different languages. The more I worked with the engineers, the more I could not leave them. I felt that there was definitely synergies, even though we do think very differently. It is an evolving and ever-changing landscape, and its ebbs and flows can be deep. So I guess my initial, 2005, end of 2005, not too long after we saw a global financial crisis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was still relatively new and young in my HR career. And yet here we found ourselves faced with, redundancies in the 30s and 40s. And that was enormous. So there's a lot of resilience that you build as part of being in it. It's a challenging industry from it's fast paced.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of external clients, and they're all varied. So
Yep.
there's a lot of challenges for engineers, and I can see how I can support my colleagues in being not just the best that they can be, but enjoy the ride, because it can be fast and furious at times.
We've had numerous conversations about human resources, about, IR as well. But I want to get an understanding, and maybe you can sort of paint a picture a little bit for the viewers and also the listeners today. I suppose, why are you passionate, or why do you enjoy human resources? I think we've heard from many people in past podcast episodes as to the reason why they're passionate about it. Maybe there was an incident or an event, or it could be that it was instilled by the people. Why are you passionate about human resources?
I get a sense of achievement out of the things that I do. That's part of it, but the bigger part is because of and for the people I work with. So it's very much less about me and more about them. Whatever I go into it, even though I say I'm nimble, I go into it with heart and soul, right? And I want to make sure I get the best outcome for a person or a group, and both sides, because obviously when you're in HR, you're sitting in the middle and you've got both sides of a table. There are challenges all the time.
Yep.
You and I have spoken about a number of different challenges over time. Some of them are large, some of them are small. Yep. I definitely get my energy out of those challenges, as much as some of those can be quite difficult to work through. I can feel it. I see myself, the energy coming, which is great. Legal situations, obviously, we have to take a different approach. But what I've found over the years is that most of the challenges, if we address them in an honest and upfront way, and we care enough to give feedback, we generally resolve what started off as probably a little itch, and we deal with it. So one of the things I do instill in my my leaders, in myself, is that we deal with things quickly and early. And if you as an employee have an issue, talk to us early. Don't hold on to it, because I'm pretty sure we can fix this before it's this big,
Yeah.
when it's only this big. So that's probably a big part of my passion. And the other is the recruitment side, because a part of my role, sometimes a big part, sometimes a lesser part, is recruitment,
Yep.
which is a lot of fun. You get to speak to a lot of great people. And for me, it's working out how I can see that person's skill set and personality working with our teams, and then watching them flourish within that role. That's great to see. I've had lots of conversations with candidates over time that have not had great experiences in their workplace, and I don't want that for anybody. I want people to thrive. I want people to be happy, and that's my give back, if you like. That's what I
Yeah.
get out of it, and that's why I remain passionate about it.
You talked quite a bit already about being able to help the people around you, and that you do love to see that progress, or you love to see that sense of achievement. But it also seems to also permeate into the recruitment side, which is being able to, I suppose, pitch to potentially new employees, come over here,
Yes.
because you're quite clear on the benefits, or the reasons why people are coming to your organization. Can you touch on that a little bit? Because the recruitment side is very interesting. I think there's quite a lot of people in the HR side who are listening right now, who probably don't love it a lot, as probably I think it's easy to say that. And I think there's people like yourself who absolutely love it. Well,
Yeah.
what in recruitment? Why does that give you such a sense of joy, or why are you so passionate about it?
Well, firstly, because I want people to be happy in their roles. I mean, that's first and foremost. I think because I've been in the industry for as long as I have, I've gotten to understand a lot about engineering. And although when I'm talking to professionals, they might think that I want to talk to an engineer because you don't talk my language, and that's okay. And we will make that happen, of course. But I walk into any of the roles, and I've had three roles now in HR, and with all of them, I've walked in as though I'm the owner of that business. And I will always do that. No matter how big or small that business is, I will walk in with the feeling that I own this business. And so when I'm selling the dream, I'm selling the dream, right? I know it. I understand the team in which I am sort of pitching forward, if you like. And I can give a pretty good understanding to that person about the types of work we're doing, where we're doing it, why we do it. And I think that part of that gives me energy, right? Is having great conversations with people who not always are the right person right now.
Yeah.
They're the right person in 6 months or 12 months, or even longer, perhaps. I had a really interesting conversation with someone in one of our offices not that long ago, who was quite new at the time, and I will do check-ins with each of our staff, especially if I'm interstate. It's great to go and have a coffee with a couple of the team. And
Of course.
he said, "My wife remembers you." And I thought, "Oh, who's that?" And he said, "You interviewed her once and she'll never forget the way she felt when she came out of that." And I thought, well, see, that's the win for me, because you want people to walk away feeling great about the conversation, about the opportunity, and that it follows on into an awesome role that they thrive in.
You have a very specific philosophy there that you touched on, which is that you walk into an organization, with the mindset that you are the owner, and therefore, because of that, there's ownership over recruitment, there's ownership over human resources, projects, whatever the situation might be. Where did you get that idea for that concept? Did you watch something? Did you read something? Like, how did that sort of develop?
I think partly it came from my parents. I think that's always been instilled in me to own it, own your mistakes, and own your, the things that you do really well. But I also think I got that from ex-colleagues over the years, especially initially At the chamber, I had two very, very prominent people that I will always be grateful to. And I think that they both taught you that lesson without saying anything. Do you know what I mean? Like it was something that they walked in that way and you wanted to follow. And to me, I think that's where it all comes from.
Do you think those two people could be listening right now?
One may be able to listen right now. The other definitely wouldn't because he's passed away. So, well, potentially he is. Who knows?
Well, I mean, the thing is, we have these mentors we have in the past, who we've trained under or learnt from so much. It's so interesting that you've been able to provide clarity around that philosophy. So clear that you're able to say, yeah, I walk in with that mindset of being an owner, and it really makes sense what you're saying. It sort of really permeates into your HR philosophy, I would say. Would that be true to say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I feel if more people did that, we would probably have less conflict, because I think there's perception. Conflict is often from perception. And I think when we all own the parts that we do and we are able to talk about things, we eradicate, if you like, that perception and we move forward in the right way. So that's how I kind of am. And look, you've met me a number of times, you know what I'm like, and I say it as it is, but for me, it works and I will continue that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. So I suppose talking a bit about the past, and maybe if I could take you on a time travel journey, there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast or watching this podcast who are probably in their early HR career. And so potentially people who are coming through very early, but also people who have switched from maybe a completely different side of business, say operations or finance, and they switched over into HR. If I could get you to, go back in time, go back to the early career you or early HR career you, what advice would you have for the early career Claudia?
I think the first thing is to be ready for absolutely anything. So going back to that whole Swiss Army knife, over the years, you start to, you have your tools and you put them in your little kit. And so over time you've got it, but be ready for absolutely anything so that when you're in a situation, whatever comes at you, you're probably going to be ready for. Not necessarily will you have all the answers, but you're not blindsided by something, right? So you open yourself up to anything. The other is don't take no for an answer. So eventually it might be a no, right? But don't let that be the first answer. So if you've got a passion about something and you feel that it's the right thing for a group of people or the whole of people, fight for it and make sure that the no is a definite no and why is it a no? But don't assume that no, yeah, okay, great, and we walk away. And I say that from my own lessons over years, right? Because if I'd been more passionate about certain things, maybe different things would have come out for people at certain times. I think the other one is to take every opportunity that comes your way. And I know that I have grown because of some of the opportunities that have been given to me or offered to me. They haven't been easy, like it's been tough sometimes, but you come through the other side and you are stronger for it and you will have more to give as a consequence. And then I think also to take risks along the way because you never know what that's going to lead to. And oftentimes it does lead to success. And I think that's a big thing that sometimes we don't want to take the risk, but when we do, wow. And the last part for me, and this is from my own experience over the years, is don't take it personally.
Oof, that's a good one.
Right? Because things will happen and it might come out in a particular way, but but never take it personally.
I think there's also another big segment of this the podcast listeners who also are probably more in the senior range. Maybe they have executive roles. senior leadership roles or leadership roles in HR. What are the two big pieces of advice you have for any person in human resources or currently in human resources, potentially in that role as well?
So I guess one piece would be to look at all angles before you come up with a decision. It can be very easy to take one path on what's happening. But when we uncover, and I do, I guess I do see myself as, I scratch the surface quite a bit, and I do shake things up from time to time to make sure that we are coming up with the right decision for everyone, not the right decision for me. Because that's the important part. Like,
Yeah.
as a HR professional, it's not about us ever. It's about everybody else. And if we go back to the thing about never taking it personally, when you can learn not to do that, you will actually see things from a broader perspective and then make good decisions or put forward good options, if you like, recommendations for solution for all people. All people. The other thing for me would be, and this I think is how I tend to be, I'd say in everything I do, is be professional, but curious, practical, and transparent.
Yep.
All of the things at the same time, right? In all your dealings, you will gain so much more trust and respect from all. That doesn't mean to say everybody agrees with everything you say, but you have a lot of trust and respect from all when you walk that I feel that when things get a little bit too political, if you like, or we don't really want to say how we're feeling about a certain thing, you will find yourself backpedaling at some stage. So for me, honesty, transparency from the beginning is a much, much better way to go. And as I said before, going into every situation like the owner actually helps because your mindset does shift slightly to do that. And above all, enjoy every challenge, even the hard ones. Get the energy out of them because everybody learns from it. So take the energy. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Really decent pieces of advice there. I think when you look at the people that listen to this podcast and people who are in those really senior roles, there's the technical side, of course, the technical side of human resources for an IR, if it's recruitment or learning development or whatever your area might be.
Yeah.
There's obviously the technical side, but there's also, and you sort of touched on it, which is, and actually, no, you've said it, which is essentially that mindset and those challenges, being challenge ready, and embracing that challenge. I think that's quite interesting because HR is going through quite a lot of challenges right now. It really is.
Yeah.
Workplaces are going through a lot of challenges. There's new laws, all these types of things. So, what's the biggest challenge you're facing now in human resources, and how are you tackling it?
Finding good talent's always going to be a challenge, but I think retaining your good talent is often more of a challenge.
Mm,
I'm very fortunate in the business I'm in now. I think we do a lot of things with our team that do keep our talent, but there's a lot of external factors that a business has less control about, right? And we talked about some of those. You've got clients, you've got sites, you've got external workplaces, if you want to call them that, when
yep.
they're going to meetings, that you have no control about how things might be happening there. I think for me, another challenge is communication. So we spoke earlier about, small things becoming large things. If we talk about it early, we diminish, if you like, the perception. But we should have workplaces where people know where they stand and know where they can go or where they're going.
Yep.
Because when we are communicating that regularly, and it's okay not to know as well. So a big thing is don't not have the conversation because you don't know where you want to go. That's the best time to have the conversation
Yeah.
because then we can work it out together, right? So don't hold up or hold off because you don't know, because that's okay. But not doing it is not okay because eventually perception comes in and then we lose our great talent. And, I've had some amazing conversations with people when they're about to leave a business. And I think, Why didn't we have this conversation 6 months ago?
Yeah.
I
Interesting.
didn't know how to. So communication, I think, will always be a big challenge. And then so I've probably given more than two, but another one is giving feedback. So no matter
Yep.
how it makes you feel, that person giving the feedback, remember it's not about you. It's about the person who's getting the feedback. So yes, you need to think about how you're going to give feedback, but not gifting people with that feedback is the worst thing you can do, because you don't allow that person to grow, right? So sharing great advice helps support and is the gift of growth. And a solid plan that comes out of that leads to success for all. So they all seem easy when you're talking about them now, but it's a challenge. It's a challenge to have people feel comfortable in those conversations and situations.
Well, I think the reason why it is challenging is because it's not necessarily a linear path, is it? We people tend to talk about it like it's a linear path. It's not. You have several staff
Yeah.
at several levels, at different levels, different types of conversation, different personalities. You have your own workload, and there are some urgent matters. There are some projects you got to work on. Getting buy-in from people who manage the people you're talking to, and then there's other things that you really can't control. So things that is happening in their own personal life, or that they want to go into a different direction or different industry. So you can't. It seems to be we have a lot of people out there talking about this as if it's a simple thing to do, or it's a very linear thing to do. I think there's more nuances to that. I think you identified that the conversations you're having, or you have, shouldn't be put off because you don't necessarily have the result in mind, or you don't know what the answer might be. I think that's a really
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah. And I think with that is also the growth side might be that someone wants to take a different path.
Yep.
And that's actually okay.
Mm.
It's not okay to continue doing what you're doing and not like it.
Yeah.
And the other part to that is, but what if I give them advice and they leave? Or what if I give feedback and they leave? And what if you don't give feedback and they stay? Because if they're not happy in what they're doing, we're not succeeding together. And I think that's I know it sounds a bit controversial, but it's more about let's get it out on the table. Like what can we do to support? What can we do to grow? What's our plan? How do we get there? And I think when we go down that path, we do have great teams and solid relationships as a consequence, because trust comes in, respect comes in for both sides. We get to know each other a bit more. It's all of those things.
It seems to me that you really focus on the relationship building. Would that be right to say? Like that's a
Definitely.
real big focus,
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
Um, and there's probably a lot of, and when I say a lot of people, there seems to be a lot of really prominent voices out there, not just in human resource, but in leadership. All the big names with all their books and everything else. There seems to be so many different movements happening right now, so many different focuses right now, and it's probably reflected a little bit in some of the legal changes. It's probably reflected a little bit in what the media are focusing on.
Yeah.
From your perspective, does that they do just essentially then double down on what you're doing, or do you have to make changes in terms of how you see human resources going forward?
It's probably continually changing.
Yeah.
So whilst you can have a plan in HR, you're going to have to be resourceful enough to change that pretty quickly
Yeah.
if things change. Industry, we can have a downturn that completely changes the focus on what a team are going to do. You can have an upturn, completely changes the focus. You can win an enormous job, it completely changes the
Yeah.
focus. So you have to remain nimble to be able to do that. Now, in most of the roles I've had, I've been a single operator in the HR space. And I've worked with teams that are 600 and 700 people strong, grown teams from sort of 60 something to 300 and something. And in a team now that we're just over the 100, which is great. I don't feel we need to have an enormous team around us to do it, because that takes away from that nimbleness, to be honest. But
Yeah.
it's ever changing. Like, the plan at the beginning of the year, the cycle, whatever it might be, could be a very different plan as you getting towards the end of it. So stay nimble.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a good hint there, I think, or good tip for those who are listening. A question that I want to ask you as well, and I sort of ask pretty much everyone that comes on this podcast, what is the one thing about human resources that people might disagree with you about?
There's probably two things. One, I think, is the way I go about a lot of things that I do with that owner hat mentality means that I will come up with some firm advice / decisions for the actual owners to take on if they wish.
Yep.
And a lot of HR people will say, but that's not your job. Your job is just to do X, Y, and Z. And I feel that because I'm very passionate about the business and the people I work with, I feel like it's the thing I should do. And I won't not do that. I mean, if I have an owner say, I don't agree with your advice or your decision, absolutely fine. But I will still always go down that path and be that owner in that moment.
Yep.
And not make the decision for them, but definitely give them some solid advice and decisions to choose from. I think if we're talking about
there is you basically lay it on a platter for the decision makers. Here's my advice. Here's the potential decisions. These are ramifications. This is my recommendation.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, obviously they've got to make a decision. But you like, your view is HR should be putting that on a platter for the decision makers to make that decision.
Well, my role in HR feels like it should. So it might not be for every HR person, but I also don't see myself as the average HR person. Because I do get myself involved in lots of things that aren't necessarily for HR to get involved in. And that's okay, because I enjoy the role I have. Do I complain sometimes? Of course I do. But I probably wouldn't have it any other way. Like, that's just how I am. I think another thing that maybe HR people don't disagree with, but I think other people might, is remote work.
Yep.
And I feel that that's been, of course, it was a necessity some years ago. And gosh, if we didn't have the ability to do it, I don't know where our world would have ended up.
Yes.
But I feel getting our teams back, getting our communities back has been really challenging. And it's not about the person, it's about the younger people around us that are losing out, because some of the older and wiser with knowledge aren't there to share it. Don't get me wrong, having a day here or there is a very different scenario. That doesn't break your community, your connections, or the development people get. But when we've got this sort of long haul approach, I just feel like we've got to come back together as a community. HR, also known as people and culture. How do you have a culture if everybody's not there? Like, it's so it can be a bit controversial, I think, for some. I'm very old school.
The answer is yes. The answer is yes. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening right now going, wait on, Claudia. I don't agree with that.
What?
I'm sure.
And for me, I'm old school. I like to be in the office. I enjoy being around the people. My home is my home. My work is my work. And they do obviously cross over and interweave. But at the same time, bringing our teams together is for me enormous. And we should do it more.
Just on that part, I just want to ask you just one more question on that, which is, you talked about how you believe that the younger people, the newer generation, and I think you're sort of talking about it from many perspectives, but in particular the engineering perspective, are losing out on
Mm.
the knowledge sharing or the knowledge gathering, the osmosis of learning from the more senior people not
Yeah.
being there, or not
Yeah.
physically being there at least.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting view, because is that because you sort of see that and you go, that's
Definitely.
what's happening, or is it from data? Like where how do you making that statement? What are your thoughts behind that?
I'm seeing it all the
Mm,
time. I'm seeing it's probably less so in my current role, but I certainly, in past roles where you had a large team of people and pre-pandemic group of people that generally were all in the office together, and juniors would learn, as you say, by osmosis. You don't know what you don't know, so you're
yeah.
not going to ask the question. So I will have the argument from time to time, or debate, if you like, from people that say, oh, but if I have a question, I can ask that. But if you don't know that that's even a question, how would you ask it? So
Mm.
that cross conversation that might not even be your conversation is vital, and the gold nuggets. So I have seen it happen. And I think that our young generation now, grads coming out, experienced it at university. Now they're going to experience it in their workplace. What does it look like in 5 or 10 years? And I want people to thrive, and you thrive together, not isolated.
So you think there'll be stunted growth there? Do you think in the next generation or
Well, I
next
think we've already
generations?
started to see it.
Yeah.
And now it's about, well, hold on, can we pull back a little bit now before it's too far gone?
Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Really interesting. I think there'll be a lot of people listening. I suspect
It won't
you're gonna
like
have
me, but that's all right.
I suspect you're going to have a whole pile of people that say, absolutely, totally seeing that. That's what I think. And then I think you'll have another half saying, or another portion saying the complete opposite. I think but I think where with that area, remote work and work from home, I think there needs to be more conversation about what that is doing in terms of learning and development. I think
Yeah.
you've hit the nail on the head there. I think from a work-life balance, I think that all those things have been discussed quite a lot. I think there's a lot of literature, there's a lot of data, I think there's a lot of stuff out there around that. I
Yeah.
think that's already been done quite a lot. I think that next part then is, okay, what these are essentially unintended consequences of this. And you essentially identified that. How can we put that genie in the bottle a little bit, or is it, is it other solutions? And I think it's worth those discussions coming out.
Yeah. And it is conversations with people to understand why there's a need, for sure. I don't think I don't have a solution for it. I just
Mm.
see that if we don't address it, we are going to some people will not progress at the same rate as their predecessors did, basically.
And you're saying this because not only that you see that potentially happening, you're saying this because you're already seeing it happening. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Seems very
Definitely.
interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's switch it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Now we have a tradition here on the HR Engage podcast. We ask these rapid fire questions all about
Yeah.
you. So I'm just going to ask these questions. First thing that comes to your mind, fire away. Okay. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay. So Claudia, what is your favorite movie?
Depends on which way you go with this. So if we go lighthearted,
Yep.
it would definitely be Love Actually.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Love it. Have to
Great
watch it
movie.
at least once a year. All those sliding door moments, and yeah, it's just a fun movie.
Excellent choice. Excellent choice. And so there was a lighthearted one.
Yeah,
Is there a more
yeah,
grittier, darker side one?
if we go drama / action packed, we would definitely be looking at the Equalizer series.
Oh,
Not because I like to take revenge or anything, just
so gone Hugh
love
Grant to
them.
Denzel. Like that.
Yeah, I
This is
know,
the
I know,
extreme we're
I know.
talking about with Claudia. Okay. Excellent. Favorite holiday destination for you?
So obviously, knowing that my family lives overseas, oftentimes I will go, if I go on holiday, it's to see family.
Yep.
So I'm either in Canada or the UK. favorite holiday destination beyond sort of what I would call tours of duty would definitely be New York. And I've been there a few times, and I can
Oh,
do that as a side trip if I'm going into Toronto. So it works quite well. Then we talked about a bucket list place.
yep.
There's obviously Japan is somewhere that I would like to go.
Claudia, just letting you know, if you go to maybe every third or fourth Australian, they'll tell you they've gone to Japan in the
This
last
year,
2
I
years.
think nearly every Australian's been to Japan. It's been nuts. Half of our office have been to Japan.
Yes, so you could probably ask them very much what it's like. Yeah,
Whether it's
for
somewhere I
sure.
should go. And then another place, and I don't think I will ever get to do this,
Yeah.
but it was the most amazing thing to see. And it was in Norway,
Uh-huh.
and basically living in a very small, beautiful, but small kind of small home, but with wolves on the site. So you actually can go and sit with these wild wolves.
Right.
And I'm like, that is the most amazing thing that I could think of, but I would need to win the lottery in order to do that. So it's on the bucket list.
Where did you see that? TikTok or Instagram? Or where did you see that?
It was on one of these sort of most amazing destination type shows. And I was like,
Yes.
my God, I want to do that.
It actually does sound kind of great, actually. That
Look, it looked amazing. It would be probably one of the most frightening things you'd ever do, but
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to do it.
Excellent. Claudia, apart from family and friends, and I think we've already touched on this, but who has inspired you the most?
Definitely my first two bosses, both for different reasons, amazing people. And for both of them, I mean, obviously I did say to you that one of them had passed away, but I had told him that before. I did get the opportunity, because when you're younger, you don't necessarily think about it. But as you
Yeah.
get older, you realize, and I kept in touch with both, and I was able to tell him that he had inspired me. And certainly this other ex-colleague, I still see him from time to time, right? He's in his 90s now, but he comes into the city, and I've had coffee with him a few times, and it's great. And also the very first person who was a HR director that I didn't necessarily go into work with her. She came into the business after, and we went through the whole global financial crisis together.
Yeah.
He taught me so much. I mean, it was, I literally just landed into this great role, and then this happened. And I thought, what do you do? And she said, it's all good. And we worked through it. But she, I learned so much from her feedback, but also just watching her in motion. And I will never forget that. I mean, all three of them have given me lots. Yeah.
So if that person who Claudia is talking about is you, feel free to send us put a comment down, say that's me, something like that, to let us know who you are, so we can give you a bit of a clap, because obviously getting that shout out from Claudia is fantastic, but it has led to us having someone like Claudia in the engineering industry who's so passionate about HR. I think it's wonderful. I think it's fantastic. So kudos to you guys that are out
Thank you, all of you.
Now, what's the thing that you do outside of work that you're passionate about or keeps you going?
So I've got my fur family, love them to death.
Right.
So I've
Yes.
got 2 dogs and 3 cats. I love to create. Now that can be in the house, that could be the kitchen, like I can be creating different meals. I love to bake, love to be in my garden. That's a big one. That probably is where I can think the most as well. So, things happen in our space that are challenging, and getting in the garden helps come up with some solutions. And I think if I potentially have my time again, I might be an interior designer. I love to do a bit of that sort of creativity in the house. So I think those are my things, really.
Cool. So you really are into that sort of
Love
better
it.
design and homes and all that type of
Love
stuff.
it.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell us something about yourself that people might not know about you.
Most people won't know this. So when I was a teenager and through until I was in my early 20s,
Mhm.
I was convinced, and I trained for this, that I was going to be a makeup artist for TV and film. So I finished school, as in, secondary school. I went to training. I did that. I worked full time and did this as a part-time gig.
Yep.
It didn't, I mean, I don't think I was hungry enough or tough enough to be that person. If you think about it, it's pretty
Yep.
tough industry. And that's what I wanted to do. I mean, I was
Wow.
convinced that was it for me. Then obviously I moved to Australia and let that go. And I think I made the right choice going into HR.
I think so
I
too.
do definitely get my energy out of it. But yeah, that was going to be my thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely did not know that about you. So
Really?
that's incredible little tidbit. So a little bit of a tidbit for everyone out there that's listening.
Yeah.
Um, so a couple of closing questions,
Yeah.
Claudia, because it's been a really good conversation. But I want to close off with a few other questions. Now, if you could recommend a book, a movie, a TV show, or a podcast to listeners, what would it be and why?
So it's probably book / podcast because she's done both. And that would be Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. I love her. I love all of her books, but I think Dare to Lead teaches us a lot. Teaches us a lot about ourselves, teaches us, and not just in your workplace, but your life. Great communication. You learn how to communicate, how to communicate with your people, how to be the best communicator. And she did that as a podcast, which was great. Now,
Yes.
I've probably read and listened to the book more than several times, many times. And every time I read it, I pick up something new and different, or I'm reminded of something. And I think that everyone should read it, especially if you lead teams.
That's a great hint there.
Yeah,
I've also read Dare to Lead. It's a very good book. Yeah.
the skill of communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Is there a quote or moment of inspiration you'd like to leave us with?
So this is a quote that I saw, and I'm a bit of a Pinterest, get onto Pinterest, and I do have quite a lot of quotes. And I like this one because I think it does, without me realizing it, I think I do live this. Be strong but not rude. Be kind but not weak. Be humble but not timid. And be proud but not arrogant. And I think in our space, HR, all of those are good things to live by.
I think when we look back or we, listen back to your podcast, I think it's really easy to say that you have a slightly different mindset, and that whole mindset of that owner mindset, coming in with that owner mindset. I think it's really interesting that you develop that and it permeates through basically everything you do in human resources. And your interest, I suppose you're passionate about recruitment, you're passionate about retention. I think those things really permeate from that mindset. I mean, it was really interesting as well to hear that you wanted to be a makeup artist to the stars, and then eventually found your way into HR. I mean, that's also very interesting. Those are really interesting things too. And of course, your views on remote work. But I think it was a bit more than the usual discussion, which is, mostly talking about that whole, the balance of work and life. But you looked at it more from a generational knowledge perspective and the next generation, which again, coming from that mindset of that owner mindset approach, I think is really interesting in human resources, and also taking that to another level, which is providing some, almost putting on a platter for the actual decision makers. Here are the options, here's my recommendations, and trying to, providing some influence in that decision making process. I think that again comes from that mindset, that owner mindset. I think that was really interesting, that pretty much that mindset permeates all the way through. Even your passion about HR, it's about building relationships. I think it all comes from that mindset. I think it's really interesting to have this conversation. And I suspect there'll be a lot of people listening at home right now, or if you're in the gym, or if you're on a train, or wherever you're listening to this, think a lot of people will be listening to this go, yeah, that's a really different mindset that maybe I could have a think about utilizing, at least for parts of my role. I think it's a really interesting mindset there.
Thank you.
Claudia, thank you so much for being on the HR Engage podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think there's a lot of nuggets of gold that the listeners are going to get out of this. So thank you so much. And
thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Claudia. And that's me, Jonathan Mantle, with the HR Engage podcast. Of course, if you do like this or you want to subscribe to this, please go ahead. If you do like it, press a like, subscribe, and follow the HR Engage podcast. I'm Jonathan Mamerle. Speak soon.